Hey, and welcome to another conversation with Carrie. I am so excited about this. This is only my second episode of this format of doing interviews, which aren't even really interviews because this is where I get to just talk to people who are experts in their field, people who I admire and trust, people who I know really well and think that they have amazing things to say, or people who I don't know well and want to know better. But the whole premise of Conversations with Carrie is that we talk to experts about other stuff. So whatever they're the expert in, it may or may not come up. We're going to talk, because I believe that how you do anything is how you do anything is how you do everything. And so we're going to get to know people who are amazing in their field, but we're not talking about how amazing they are in their field. So today I have my friend Dana, and Dana, thank you so much for playing with me in this new format.
Aw, thanks, Carrie. I couldn't resist. You were like, come and have a conversation. Absolutely.
Well,
Anytime.
and truth be told, it's been a long time since we've caught up. So I interviewed you. I mean, I think it's been almost a year.
Oh my goodness.
I know it's been a long time, at least
What
not
have we
quite, because
done?
we met last May and it's March now.
Right.
So not
Quite.
But for anybody who's interested, I will be posting the link to that interview below so you can find out more about Dana and what she does. But we haven't really had a chance to talk much since, I don't think.
Oh my goodness. Are you sure? I'm sure we had a conversation in between. It doesn't feel like that long.
Well, I know I interviewed you and you interviewed me, but I don't think this is the power of social media and like responding to each other's stuff and being on each other's email lists is I feel fairly up to date with you and what you're doing in your business.
Yeah.
But it's a whole different conversation when you're getting up to date with somebody and what's going on in their life. So first of all, I was going to tell you, I forgot to tell you this. I was going to ask you what you're drinking, but I don't see that you're drinking anything.
Oh, well, I do have some water.
Okay. Me too.
If it was a little later in the day, I'd have a glass of wine with you. But I think 1:30 is a little early.
It's only 10:30 here, so it's a lot early.
It's a lot early. Yeah, it starts to move into that maybe you're an alcoholic and you should go to some meetings kind of,
situation.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know you. I know you're an expert in your field. I've been watching your business really. I guess it's from my perspective, it seems like you've just been really growing and exploding this past year and really stepping into your own as a human being. But when I sent you this questionnaire for things we might want to talk about on the show, a lot of the things I learned, I saw on your answers, I kind of already knew about you because we got to know each other. We met over a retreat, right? So we got to know each other fairly intimately over a few days. But this one, I couldn't believe. So tell me how on earth your very first real job, well, okay, just tell me, go ahead and just explain. Because okay. I can't make it work with who I know you to be. So.
I know. That's why I love that one. Is like, when you have those games where people, you put in like a tidbit about you and then it goes into a hat and you draw them out and people have to like write down who they think it is in the room. And this is one that I use. Of course, I'm not going to be able to use it much anymore, but I started out in library techniques. I did a co-op placement in the library. I love libraries. I love reading. And I thought I wanted to be a librarian because I just was like, I felt like at home there. I just was like, these are my homies, these are my people. And so I went down that path as my first career path. I didn't make it through the college and it was like, okay, no, that's not for me. But I still love libraries. So I love playing on that. My first path was as a librarian because it's such a contrast to what I do now and, who most people think of me as.
Yeah, because the librarian, I see the librarian, and this isn't fair because I have a friend who's a librarian and she's amazing. Mm-hmm. But my stereotype of the librarian is like kind of nerdy, super mousy, nose in a book, maybe not super comfortable with people, slightly mean,
Slightly mean. Oh my goodness.
Right? Well, because the librarian's always like, shh. You can tell I was the kid talking in the library. And I don't know you to be any of those things. So, yeah. Okay. So you started out with a career path in library arts. What made you realize it wasn't for you?
Mostly it was the workload of the college. I'm going to be honest. It was like, I am, for the most part, I'm kind of a lazy person in a lot of ways. And so, you know, I get there and we're like, they're mapping out what we're going to be doing. And it's like, okay, you're expected to read. It was like 15 books a week or something. It was like a crazy amount of books. I know, it was huge. Like, it was just huge. It was like this, I don't know, I might be exaggerating because, you know, it has been a while, but it just was like this, oh my God. And we started getting into the course material and I'm like, this is not fun. This is no, you know, and I look around and it really was a lot of those stereotypes. It was very, you know, geeky, unfortunately. I was definitely the skinniest person in the room. You know, that's another terrible stereotype, but you know, it was awkward. It was socially awkward between the classmates. It just was like this most uncomfortable, you know, you take a whole bunch of people who are not comfortable with their body, not comfortable with who they are, put them in one room because they wanted, you know, they just want to read books. And that's, you know, that's who I was going to class with. And I'm like, I don't think this is for me. So I took a year off. I did what do they call that? The vacation year or whatever it is. And ended up working at McDonald's of all places for a year. Cause I was like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I also was only 17. Like, I graduated high school young, right? I was like, I don't know, you know, so, you know, having existential crisis of who I was and leaving the cult and figuring out what I want to do for a career.
Okay.
And
Hold up, you have to go back. You have to go back to the leaving the cult part, but keep going.
I just like throw that in. Oh, bomb. Yeah, you know, so it's really hard to figure out what you want to do as a career path when you're in the midst of, I don't even know who I am, let alone what I want to do. So yeah.
So you and I are both in the field of personal transformation, personal evolution. And I think that's going to be part of, that's why we're in the field that we're in, right? Is because we recognize the seeming cruelty of expecting someone at 16 or 17 or 18 or 22 or whatever to know their path for the rest of their life. Yeah. But of course we both know, right, that the thread, right, it's been there since we were really, really small, but that like committing to what I'm going to be when I grow up, right? Mm-hmm. Clearly both of us had some resistance to that and took a winding road. Yes. So two things came up. So you get to tell me what you want to talk about first.
Okay.
Number one is you said you're a lazy person. And I said, at the beginning, I said, how we do anything is how we do everything.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, are you really lazy? Or
no,
is it
I like playing on that. It's, you know, I will call myself that. I'm energy efficient.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
I look for the most energy efficient way to do anything. And I also have been blessed with being highly intelligent. So, you know, when I was in school, I have the ability to kind of like almost mind read, but I can intuit what the teachers want from me. So I never had to really work that hard, you know, except for neurology in college, which is a whole nother story. And I was really quite resentful of the fact that I got 50, you know, and I worked hard for that 50. I was so mad. So, you know, but, you know, being a type of person that things come easily to me, like I catch concepts, I get things really easily. I don't find that I have to struggle that much. You know, I will create struggle. That's a whole interesting story.
Raising my hand for that.
Yeah. I know nobody else has done that. That is only me. But yeah. So, but as far as, you know, getting things quickly, my tongue doesn't always work, but I do get things.
Okay, so I think you and I are in the same boat there. And it's actually really refreshing to hear you talk about it, because I've always had a little bit of, I don't want to say guilt. It's like smart shame. Like I have the
Yeah.
same story that school came really easily to me. I was great at test taking and writing essays and without having to read the book, which is why I cannot imagine having to be a librarian.
Right. That was why I was like, I don't want to do this much work.
Side note about me. In the beginning of my career, I was a high school English teacher.
Oh my
And
goodness.
a lot of the books that I taught, it was my first time reading them. Like, you know, I had written the essays in high school, but I had to, before I could teach them to my high school freshmen, I thought I'd
Me. That would be totally me. Actually,
Right.
that is still me. It really is. Like, I'm like showing up at the workshop and still mapping out what I'm going to do. I showed up at an event on Friday. Now I've spoken a lot and
Yes.
I know my material, but I literally showed up at the event on Friday. I get there and I'm like, you know, kind of mapping it out in my head on the drive. I get there and I just kind of jot down some things and I get up and I talk. So, you know,
I think that's part of being intuitive. And
yes.
I know I'm that way too. I do better without a script. Like the more scripted something is actually, which is why I'm doing the show this way now. Right.
Right.
The more scripted something is, the more awkward and nervous and just lame I am. But if I'm like you, like I'm trusting that I'll get the guidance, and I've learned to just show up and trust that what comes is going to be what the room needs, right? Whole different ball game. So I don't think that's lazy, right? I do think that's energy efficient. I think that's gaining confidence in your abilities. And even with school, right? It's knowing, I would maybe say path of least resistance, right? Knowing I can do this the night before and get an A, and that's okay.
So why should I do it any sooner than that?
Right. Well, okay. Did you have I had this. I would actually, because I would shame myself for being a procrastinator. So I would try and start earlier. But the earlier I start, the worse it was. Like it was actually, I learned to just, okay, it's not gonna, it might've been whatever, it was a paper or a project or something. It would be working itself out in my head for weeks. I'm a runner. So like on runs, things would come to me. But like the actual doing of it happened really quickly in the last minute. And it was always great, but trying to like do it in baby steps for months didn't work. It just stressed me out for months.
I know. And it really is. It's kind of I like that thing of the smart shaming, because, you know, gifted at something, why work outside of your genius? Stop it. Like if you're good at deadlines, then put the deadlines in there and make, you know, have that pressure so that you do it. I still can't. Like, I'm like, you know, I just realized the other day, I had promised I was going to do the launch of my audiobook for April. Sorry, I'm talking about business.
It's all right.
Yeah. and then it was like, you know, yesterday I'm like, ooh, April's coming up. I haven't recorded all of the book, and I still have to like get it to the editor to like clean it up and do all the things. But it's that pressure that actually makes me do it. Prior to that, I'm not excited about it. And then if I'm not excited about it, I can't get the, you know, the creative juices flowing and whatnot. So work to your strength. Like if you're good at procrastinating, like rock on the procrastination, right? Fuck the productivity people who tell you that you'd like, fuck them.
I'm making my husband watch this episode.
Okay, good. Fuck you, productivity people.
Okay. Well, actually, productivity people, if that's your strength, rock on, right? You're working.
Well, yeah, rock on your productivity, but don't be, you know, productivity shaming me, because I still get a lot of shit done. I just happen to do it in time pressure.
Well, that's what I've learned, right? Is that works really well for me. I just had someone yesterday be like, hey, can you do this? And I was like, absolutely. And, you know, just like, yes, I will do it. Knowing like what I wanted to do was ask for a deadline, like way in the future, like looking at all the things on my plate. I was like, okay, when can I really realistically commit to this, you know, and maybe mid-April, but I don't know. I tend to want to push things like far out. And then I'm like, no, you need to give me a deadline. You need to give me a hard and fast deadline and make it soon. And sure enough, I sat down and I looked at my calendar. I'm like, oh, I can do that Monday morning. Like it will take me, you know, it seemed like this big thing. And really, I just needed to make the deadline really soon and I'll make the time to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, I got another question. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say that, oh shoot, what is that law where it's like the length of time that it takes you to complete the task is
Yeah,
relative
I
to
don't know who it is, but that's why waiting till the last minute works great.
Right.
You can be really productive at the last minute.
We are just so efficient. We're like light years beyond all those productivity people. I'm just saying. Just saying.
Okay, so I'm not going to let that cult comment go by. So
Okay.
you were 17, you want to be a librarian, you figure out that's not for you, you take your, I forget what that's called, your mental health year. I can't remember what it's called. Someone will let us know. Your gap year. You take
gap year, yes.
You're gapping it at McDonald's, and you casually are like, oh, and I escaped a cult.
What?
Yes. So fill us in on that.
I'm rocking it out in my badass McDonald's polyester uniform. Right. Oh yeah.
I mean, who doesn't rock it?
Oh yeah, right? Everybody rocks that thing. That is so ugly. Just seriously. Yeah, so I grew up in a cult, or what I clearly label a cult. It is on the index for mild cults. So I grew up Jehovah's Witness, and my family, my father was very strict with it. So, he kind of pushed the limit of the mild situation. And the big thing in the markers is that there's no outside contact. So outside of school, I was not allowed to associate with other people. I didn't hang out with anybody, so kids were having parties, I'd always have to say no. And as a result, I actually hung out with the nerdy kids, which is probably why I ended up in the library so much, because they didn't have parties. And so there was nothing for me to say no to. It worked out really well. I did also end up being the person who was like, I could just float between all of the groups. I didn't have hard and fast, this is my group. People just knew that it was like, oh, I'll just hang out with these people because it's easier. But because I was kind of a floater, sorry, I know I'm segueing off the cult thing.
Okay.
But, I was also like the school resident counselor. So, I was always available. Right? I know, everybody liked to talk to me and tell me all their problems. They still do. So, I was kind of the floater, and I was usually available. And so, if anybody needed to talk about what was going on, they would talk to me. So it was kind of fun. I was, really doing my career before I even did my career, which is cool.
Okay, so escaping a cult. So you grow up. So you grow up in this situation, because honestly, like it feels. I want to totally respect your experience, and yet it feels really strange to me to call Jehovah's Witnesses a cult, just because, I mean, I know a few people who are Jehovah's Witness, and it just, like, to me, it seems like, okay, that's just a religion around the corner. So it's bringing up some stuff inside of me.
Awesome.
But either way, okay. So having said that, I know you help people with this shit that comes up. So, so help me here.
Talk about that. How does that make it? So yeah, and let's address that, because that is a controversy, because I've had people push back on the fact that I call it a cult, and some of it is that my experience growing up in it was very cult-like. Yeah. I was, in the extreme end of it. We went to church 3 times a week, did door knocking every week. Then you had your, once a week of your own Bible study going on. So that's, 5 days a week, you've got something going on with the religion. No outside association. We didn't even talk to our neighbors, and we lived in an area where the neighbors all had parties and things, and we weren't part of it. So it was very isolated. It was very insular. There was definite mind control, brainwashing of things. There was a lot of the beliefs are crazy making, and when you ask for further explanations, which is another thing about the cult, right? You are not allowed to question anything. So when I would question things, I was told to shut up and be a good girl. Yeah. Women, the whole women are second-class citizens. Like, one of the things a lot of people don't realize is that, like, if a man is not available to run the meeting, because men are the only ones that are allowed to lead. Oh yeah. 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 Does it make you want to gag? And this is still today. Okay. So there's several things. So if a man's not available, then the woman has to wear a hat in order to lead the meeting. What the fuck is that?
Well, I mean, that makes sense, right?
Right, of course. The hat's just gonna put, like, that's just gonna do all of it, right? Like, oh my God. So there's some crazy shit. And I think, really it's the fact that you can't question, the fact that you're isolated and segregated. And when I chose and said, I don't want this anymore, then the congregation as a whole was required to shun me.
Holy.
Yes. And so that's, that's significant. So you grow up. And so for me, I have this very strong community. So many of these people are my, surrogate parents and family. And they, these are everybody, right? So in order to leave, in order to say, I don't want this religion anymore, if you want to call it a religion, this is why I call it a cult. In order for me to leave that cult, I have to give up everybody I know.
Oh my God, I have goosebumps. So I knew a little bit of the story from being at the retreat with you.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine being 17 years old and having the courage. So I just, sidebar. I just found a diary of mine from 1996.
Oh my goodness.
I was like 20 at that time, but I was kind of surprised at what I read. Like I was more together than I remember myself being. So maybe I can imagine at 20 having the strength to leave, or 17, but holy crap, that's everything you've ever known. So maybe I need to ask, like, what gave you the strength to leave?
And that's what I never gave myself credit then either. Like it's only in the last 5 years that I look back and I go, man, that is super badass. Like, because I know lots of friends that, left and then came back and left and came back because they couldn't make that break. So, it does take fortitude. But I think for me is that one of my core values is honesty. I realize this comes up in my relationships. It comes up in my work. And so honesty is like number one. And there wasn't honesty. Everybody was two-faced. I could feel it. And being, of course, an empath, I could feel it. And so like they're talking and I'm like, but that's not the truth, right? And so here's this religion who's preaching this thing of like, the truth will set you free. And I'm like, but y'all ain't talking the truth. It's all crazy making. And I don't know where I had the strength. I thank God, which is kind of ironic, but thank God I did, because I did get out. And I think had I stayed, I probably would have killed myself. And it's not to make this real heavy, but it's like, I just, it's like in order to compress myself into something that doesn't work for me, I would have had to like just strip everything away to the point where it was like, well, there's no point.
I actually love that you're talking about this, and I didn't know it was going to go all deep and heavy either, but that's what happens. So, because when you said one of my core values is honesty, this phrase came to me, and I don't know if I heard it from you, but it perfectly describes you and the way that you show up, and that is brutal and raw self-honesty. So one of the things that I like most about the way that you show up in your public life, in your business, is that brutal self-honesty. That you write a lot of unapologetic posts where you describe something you went through, right? And what you learned or how you grew, or and I just really appreciate that.
Aww.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so refreshing.
Yeah, that seems to be one of my superpowers, is to, just lay my mess all out there, but in a way that is like, okay, so here's the crap, here's where I'm failing, quote unquote, and then here's what I'm doing about it, and here's where we're going.
Well, that's what it's so refreshing from you, because there's so many people in the field of work that you do that are sort of like, I have arrived.
Oh, God.
I've done it all. I have made the transformation, and you can too. Let me show you how.
I got over my shit and now I make millions of dollars.
Yes. Which, I mean, and I don't want to knock people who have gotten over their shit and make millions of dollars. Like, I mean, to be quite honest, that's, well, that's my intention, right? Like that's, I would like to get over my shit and make millions of dollars. I think we all do, right? It's the hiding of, it's the not being honest about all of it.
Right. And see, there's the problem. See, it comes back again to my core value, right? Honesty. So I see those posts. And of course, when you see a post, you think, oh, you're just seeing the surface. No, no, no. You can feel the shit. So I see those posts and I'm like, bullshit. Let's call some bullshit. Like, you still have insecurities. You're still not, rocking every area of your life out, which is okay. You don't fucking have to. Stop pretending that you are some God's gift to this fucking planet. And start confessing that it's like, all right, I figured out this one little slice. I am rocking it in this one area. So yeah, that's I get kind of opinionated there.
I love it. No, that was such a great way to say it, because I think there's a lot of us, right? We want to have this perfect life, or we want to, especially in the world of Instagram, everything, right? God. Like this idea of like, this is just a side note, but let's talk about it because it's on my mind. Lately, social media is depleting me.
Oh my God, me too.
So yesterday, Facebook and Instagram were like out, and the world was in a panic. And I didn't even know because I just didn't like, I just can't right now. I'm having a hard time. And I go through this periodically, but I'm having a hard time with that, like just like being in that world. And I don't know, what do you do about that? How do you, because one of the things that I admire about you is you seem to be fairly, let's see, how do I say this? Maybe the best way to say it is you have, okay, let me think. You have firm boundaries, right? Like a hard exterior, but you're all soft and squishy and like the way, so you're like, I was trying to think of like a stuffy thing or something, but it's just, you have very firm boundaries, right? Your edges are very firm.
I'm clear.
Yeah. And yet you're so soft and squishy, which is, I think maybe not what people, okay. I was thinking about you on my run this morning and what makes you awesome. And I was thinking that about, and this is going to be tricky to not talk about your business, but like your personal brand is like, it's bold, it's badass, it's like kind of edgy. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about that and how, so you wind up attracting people who are bold and badass and edgy and like, and really want to like go, to the moon, right? But your approach is the opposite of that. And I don't even remember where this conversation started, but do you have comments on that?
Yeah, I love it. I think it's speaking to the fact that like so many gurus out there, right? Gurus, experts and whatnot, they've been one-dimensional. And I think that there's a need for people to see that we are multifaceted. Right. So yes, I am very clear about what I will and will not tolerate. And, you cross a boundary and you're going to know, like I'm not going to hold back from telling you. I will tell you nicely, but it doesn't mean that I am not capable of intense, fierce love or, holding somebody in this space so strongly that I make myself cry because it's so intense. And to be there, we have all of it. And I think that's the big thing where it's, feel all of the feels, live all of your life, have all of the things. And it's, to stop being so one-dimensional in that its success is only in the money. We need the money. Do not skip the money. Okay. I want the money. Let's be clear. And I want all the things. I want to have a great relationships. I want to, be really comfortable with who I am. And that takes a willingness to be in the ugly shit, because if you're not willing to be in the ugly shit, then you can't have all the things, because that's part of all the things, right? I think that's a lot of it, is that I want all the things.
That actually, I remember where I was going, and you said that so beautifully. That's why Facebook and Instagram, and they're depleting me right now, is
Mm-hmm.
because they're one dimensional, right?
Yes.
They're
Well, the majority of people on there are being one dimensional.
yes, and I believe that I believe that all the people on there are not one dimensional people, right? But it's sort of how we're showing up as a whole
Mm-hmm.
on those platforms
Mm-hmm.
is one dimensional, and that's why it's depleting. And I love what you said about um, having all the things and feeling all the feels, because for the longest time, and I'm still working on this, I still have a really hard time feeling extreme joy. And
Mm.
I had a friend point out to me, she's like, Carrie, you are insulating, right? If this is like mediocre ho hum, everything's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's too terrible, nothing's too great.
Yep.
You only let yourself get this great and that's sad. And she's like, here's the thing though, if you want to feel this amazing, you also have to let yourself feel this crappy.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and so I still like have to, that's a regular thing for me, is like, I just went through this recently. Like there's a big milestone going on in my life right now, and my friends are kind of excited for me, and my kids are excited, my husband is excited, and I'm like, and I want to be excited, right? But I recognize, oh, I'm not like, I'm buffering, right? I'm
Yep.
afraid
Yep.
of disappointment, or like there's something I'm not allowing myself to feel.
Oh, it's so common. That's the piece that I've been diving into a lot with people now, is this idea of, how much do you allow yourself to be over the moon excited, to be elated, to feel the joy. Even for myself, like this is what I've been diving into personally. I'm like, holy crap, I haven't really let myself get trusting the universe fully, because I'm afraid of being disappointed. And so then I don't lean fully in. And then I'm like, oh my God, I don't let myself get fully turned on. I don't let myself get like totally over the moon, crazy excited. Some of my friends who are wild, wacky artist types, right? Who are just like, whoa, out there. I don't do that. I'm like, wow. And it's not a wrongness. It's just an observation of like, if I want to have all the feels, then I need to give myself permission to move into that, try it out, like just test it out. Like, how does it feel to be like total wacky, zany, crazy, out there joy?
Well,
And
that's why you and I are drawn to those people. Like, I didn't know this. It's funny. Like, you and I we just sort of clicked, right? And we resonate
yeah.
with each other. But the more we're talking, I'm like, oh, yeah. That's why we're drawn to like love you, all the weirdos, right? But that's why we're drawn to the weirdos, right? It's because they give us permission to lean into our weird, right? To lean into our, like, they just let us maybe soften those edges a little bit.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And we give them structure.
Yep.
Right. So it's a win-win. There is that. I had a person actually recently, a friend who I have just removed from my life. And she said to me, "You are the coldest person I have ever known."
I don't know you. I don't have that experience of you at all, but keep going.
I didn't think so. I'm like, that's pretty harsh, but okay. But it's that piece of like, because she is this one of those artist people, um and it's that thing of like, she will let herself kind of like get into those extremes, but then she also has the extreme crashes. And and then one of the issues for me was that she's still in that artist cycle of 26 years later, she's still in starving artist mode. And I'm like, oh, girlfriend, like there needs to be some movement, something.
Well, and I think that's hard, right? Is just outgrowing people.
Yes.
That's been really hard for me, as like it's my life's mission, right? To continue to grow and evolve.
Me
And
too.
which is interesting, because I remember being in my 20s and being like, all right, well, I'm educated, so this is it. Like, this is got my
I'm
degree.
good. I'm done.
Yeah, like, I guess this is who I am. And I actually had a wonderful friend who gave me permission to keep growing, who was like, you don't have to be done, you can you can still learn some stuff. But even I wrote about this in my book. Early, I had this like life plan, right? Like, this is what I want to do. These are the things I want to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
And it was accomplished by the time I was 30. And I was like, I think I need to make a bigger plan,
Like,
right? Like,
oh, I'm good. Now kick back now. Yep, we're all good.
but part of that was thinking like, if I can get all this shit done by the time I'm 30, I'll happily ever after. I'll have an amazing life, right?
Yeah.
And so getting to 30 and then being like, I'm unfulfilled. WTF. Like,
What happened to that happily ever after? Oh, well,
yeah.
that's so interesting. It's like, to me, I think the fulfillment comes in the struggle. And the thing that most people are trying to avoid is the pain. So we're trying to avoid this pain. They're trying to avoid, it being hard and digging in and doing the work. And yet, it is that effort that we love, right? So you're like, you have been running, and it's that you have to, at some point, you have to kind of lean into that pain. We're going to call it that, right? You have to actually lean into that, and then you get past that little wall, and then it whoosh, opens up, and all of a sudden there's like that runner's bliss, right? But I think that we have forgotten that we actually love the challenge.
Well, that's what I would say. I don't know that I love the struggle, but I love the challenge.
Yeah,
I
struggle
love
is maybe not a great word, but challenge.
and the journey. Like, so I've been actually playing with that. So I have my friend Rachel, who she's my coach right now. She's amazing. She is like, one of her sayings is actually, this came from a being that she channels called Intimate Alien. And she says, do only what you love. And so I have a sweatshirt that says, do only what you love. That's like been sort of one of my mantras. And I've been wrestling with that on days like, I love running. I love being a runner. Okay, maybe that's the difference. I love being a runner. I love having run. There are moments while I'm running that I love running, but there are days when I don't want to do it. And I drag myself out there, but then I'm glad I did. And so I've been playing with that, like, the whole being in alignment and path of least resistance. And like, on those days, is it the best idea to make myself run? Especially like, oftentimes I don't want to do it when I've got a harder workout planned and it's raining outside and it's right. And so it's like, do I choose laziness? Is it really lazy to avoid discomfort? Right? Like, I've just been playing with that. But what I'm finding is exactly what you're saying is, no, if I were to just listen to, I have to have a deeper knowing that I love this shit, right? Mm-hmm. That I thrive on this, mm-hmm. that even when I'm running so hard, I'm like dry heaving, or right, that like, or the soreness of getting back in shape, or, whatever it is, right? Yeah. Or 100-degree days and hills and dirt. And like, I don't love that, but I love it. It's just recognizing like, okay, there's fulfillment in all of this. Yeah. There's fulfillment in the having done it. So I love that. I love that avoiding pain. Like, I want to take the path of least resistance. I want to do
a difference between taking the path of least resistance in being efficient and avoiding pain. Those are two different things. Mm-hmm. So avoiding pain puts you actually on the path of most resistance.
Okay, I know that, but explain that.
Okay, so in order to avoid pain, so let's say you're there, you got one of those days, it's like 100 degrees out, you got hills, and you're like, right? If you don't go for a run on that day, and you don't get to experience the joy of moving through that challenge, overcoming it, being, that hero's journey, like, overcome the challenge, slay the dragon, then you lose out on that. But you also end up in this little cycle of, this doesn't feel good because I didn't get that reward. And you know that reward is there. So you're sitting there, it's like, rah, 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 rah. So it's actually builds a resistance. And then if you do it, make that same choice again the next day, you build it even more. And so becomes this big steaming pile of poo that you're sitting. it's warm and squishy, but it gets pretty gross after a while, right? So, you know.
Oh my gosh. I love it.
I got to be graphic every now and then, you know.
That makes so much sense. Thank you for that. Because I've really been like, okay, do only what I love. This doesn't feel like something that I love, but I know somewhere in there I love it, which is sort of the same thing as marriage when I think about it, right? Just choosing love every day.
Yes, you don't love him every day. Like there are days where it's like, okay, well, actually, you do love him every day. And that's actually a good analogy. Same thing with the kids. You love them every day. You don't necessarily like them every day.
Yeah.
And so when you're about to go out for that run, you don't like it in that moment, but you still love it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That was such good clarity. And yes, my husband has a joke with me, like when I frustrate him to no end, when I'm like got him all like this, his new way of dealing is he says, God damn it, I love this woman. But it like lets all the air out, you know, like in that moment.
Yeah.
Okay, Dana, I could talk to you all day long, but we both have other things in our lives. And I just want to say this has been such a fulfilling and enriching conversation. I've been taking notes the whole time for like, you know, things that I'm going to write about what people expect in this episode. And I'm just going to read some bullet points to you. What we covered today. Cool. We covered being efficient with our energy, growing up in a cult, honesty, the one-dimensionalness of social media, avoiding pain, and the big steaming pile of resistance, and finding fulfillment in the struggle.
Woohoo! Look at that. All that in like, you know.
Yeah, just a casual conversation with our water bottles.
I love it.
Yeah, me too. I am just so grateful for you. So what I want to say to everybody who's watching, you already know Dana's amazing. Check the comments or the, what do you call this? The show description, whatever's below this video. Show notes. Yeah, check them out. Her full bio, all her links, where you can find her and what she does. And the last episode that we recorded together will all be there. So thank you, Dana, for being here.
Oh, always a pleasure, Carrie. I am more than happy to hang out with you anytime. And I think we maybe need to do this more than once a year.
Yeah, I think so. I realized what the last time was. It felt like we were hanging out because you were interviewing somebody on Facebook Live and I was like commenting. And so it felt like we were in the same place at the same time. Okay, so everyone, thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, share, help me. I really am going to say that. I should have said this at the beginning, but I have big dreams for this show. So if you like it, share it and tell all your friends because I mean, how rad would it be if I got to do this forever and ever, amen, and make the bajillions of dollars. Yeah. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you later.